Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's panel's discussion, Bricks versus Clicks, Opportunities in the Retail Sector in Latin America. I'm Vanessa Maibara. I'm the Marketing Manager for Brazil at ISI Emerging Markets Group. For more than 25 years, ISI Emerging Markets Group provides strategic information through their two platforms. CAC Data, which delivers macroeconomic and industry data on more than 200 economies, and IMIS that provides intelligence on company, industry, and country in emerging markets. So now let me introduce you our panelists of today's webinar. We have with us Adriano Morais. Adriano is our research economist. He plays an important role in our industry and macroeconomic analysis for Brazil. He previously worked as an economics specialist at the Federation of Industry of the state of São Paulo, where he was in charge of covering public policies for the manufacturing sector. And we also have here with us Juan Manuel Costa. He is a quantitative research associate at the University of Buenos Aires in the area of nonlinear econometric models for macroeconomic and financial topics. He also contributes to ISI team with industry and macroeconomic reports for the major economies in Latin America. Before we start, I'd like to mention a couple points that will allow us to interact during this event. So the presentation is available for downloading the handout session. And you will have the opportunity to make questions during the whole webinar. Just send your questions, just type your questions in the box that you have in the tool, that it's questions, and we will receive them and send to our panelists. Also, at the end, you will see a survey. When you end the webinar, so you will see a survey. It's important for us to hear your feedback of our event, so I kindly ask you to fill the survey so that we can continue improving our webinars. So this is the structure of our webinar. We will have the first panel about trends in the e-commerce channel. And the second one, we will talk about strategies of traditional retailers. And then we proceed to the panel 3 about investments and prospects in the sector. And at the end, we will have our Q&A session. So let's start with our first topic, which is the new trends in the e-commerce channel. So we know that Latin American e-commerce had a very impressive performance in 2020, while other sectors were struggling to deal with the COVID pandemic. Most of the countries in the region recorded a significant contraction in economic activity in 2020. However, the region was the world's fastest growing e-commerce market in 2020, according to the market research company eMarketer. Online sales in the region grew by 36.7% in 2020 compared to 27.6% in the world. Another survey from the payment service PayU observed that sales of apparel and accessories in Latin America grew by 3 digits in 2020 by 191%. And sales of beauty products and cosmetics increases by 4 digits by more than 1,200%. One of the main platforms of e-commerce in the region, the Argentinian Mercado Libre, saw its market value grow by 185% in 2020. And for some months, it became the company with the biggest market value in Latin America. Many other companies have also grown very fast in the retail sector and in segments of food delivery like Rappi, Corner Shop, and iFood. So now I'd like to ask to our panelists to give more details about the dynamic e-commerce channel in Latin America. Juan, I will start with you. So I'd like you to comment more about some success stories of companies in the Latin American e-commerce channel, particularly in Mexico, that we know that some online platforms have been growing very fast, and they're also expanding operations to other countries in the region.
Yes, Mexico is a very, very interesting country to analyze. for e-commerce, because we have several different examples of strategies followed by different type of retailers. Retailers, for example, that are purely online retailers, and some physical store retailers that have entered e-commerce as a way to diversify their operations and growth in the context of COVID-19. So in terms of pure online retailers, we have a very interesting example, which is Kavak. Kavak is a platform that actually was founded in Mexico in 2016. It specialized in online retail of used cars and vehicles, but started to grow very fast in 2020. And why is that? The main reason is that Kavak has developed a financing scheme with their own credit score system using machine learning techniques to generate basically credit and loans for their clients. And this has helped this particular model of online retail to grow very fast in the context of the economic crisis. Kavak, in fact, grew so fast in Mexico in 2020 that already that year they decided to enter Argentina. And they're also making plans to enter Brazil with very large investment. In Brazil, they are going to invest like $500 million to expand this business model to other markets in the region. But the incredible thing is the rapidness of all this process. Then you have another group of retailers, in particular in Mexico. In online retail in Mexico, there has been a large war, so as to say, between Amazon and Mercado Libre, which is from Argentina. They have been fighting for gaining market share in online retail, especially in 2020. And they have focused a lot on improving logistics, how to gain clients by a better delivery service, to have delivery on time, especially in a 24-hour period or less. And they have been following this strategy from 2019, actually, but in 2020, they expanded this to regions of the country, for example, like in Nuevo León state or Jalisco, where they didn't have this capability before. So there has been a huge competition in developing better infrastructure. Then you have, for example, ClaroShop. ClaroShop is like the online shopping marketplace from Grupo Samsborn. Grupo Samsborn is a collection of department stores in Mexico that have been struggling before COVID and even worse after COVID with losing sales to online retail. So they decided on creating a platform for all the department stores of the group, like Sears and Samsborn. And this platform has been very successful in 2020 because it actually takes advantage of the physical store network of Sears and Samsborn and other department stores of the group. So they have been actually growing a lot in segments like you were talking before, like for example cosmetics and beauty products has been very good for them. And then we have another example from Mercado Libre in Mexico. Mercado Libre has been trying a strategy of regionalizing a bit the marketplace. For example, they have developed a campaign for the Chihuahua state where they're trying to highlight products that come from the state, so people who buy in the zone, they know they will get the products faster. So this type of regionalization also helps to shorten delivery times, because if you are buying from the other side of the country, it will take obviously more time. So this is our type of the strategies that this group of retailers have been following. And then we have a very interesting case from Argentina, which is Tienda Nube. Tienda Nube is a platform that, unlike Mercado Libre or Amazon, the focus of Tienda Nube is to allow small retailers to develop their own marketplaces, customizable marketplaces at a cheap price. And they have started growing a lot in Argentina in 2020, especially in the interior of the country, because they have captured a lot of small retailers in apparel, but mostly in beauty and cosmetics, and also pharmacies, for example. And they have grown on this strategy, and they are also regionalizing this model very fast, because they have been expanding to Mexico, and they have been expanding especially to interior cities such as Guadalajara, and with very good success with the same model. So this is very interesting because you can see that a success story that works in one country in the region replicates well to another country in the region. And this is one of the most interesting trends that we notice here.
Thanks, Juan. And Adriano, I'd like to hear from you now. What have been the opportunities for the e-commerce in Brazil, and what are the strategies that are being used by retailers to grow their e-commerce operations in this new normal?
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Well, I have listed three main opportunities that online retailers are adopting in Brazil to grow. The first kind of opportunities are the technological ones related to artificial intelligence and big data, which can be used in technologies to find new customers, to optimize the purchasing process, and even to improve logistics. And a common strategy used by big retailers to incorporate new technologies is to acquire other companies, particularly startups. For example, one of the leading retailers of furniture and home appliances in Brazil, Magazine Luiza, has acquired several technological startups recently. In July, for example, it has bought one startup called Juni, which provides data analysis of the consumer behavior during an online purchase. Magazine Luiza has also acquired the recent two more other startups. One is called InLoco and the other one is Smart Hand. InLoco is specialized in geolocation tools for advertising, and Smart Hand is a search platform of product recommendation, which will be used to improve customer experience on the website and app of Magazine Luiza. A second opportunity is related to logistics. There is a dispute between some retailers to be the one with the faster delivery and also to get some hurried customers. Amazon, the North American giant of e-commerce that Juan Manuel mentioned, also has a big operation in Brazil, and Amazon has opened 4 distribution centers in Brazil in 2020, just to deliver products in a faster way to 750 cities. Another retailer, which has a big chain of physical stores, is Fast Shop. Fast Shop is implementing deliveries in 1 hour in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, the biggest markets in Brazil, using inventories of physical stores and distribution centers. In a similar way, Juan mentioned about Claro Shop. The third opportunity refers to social networks. Many companies obtain some advertising services from platforms like Instagram. Many smaller stores usually get some advertising from digital influencers. But the Brazilian unit of the Dutch retailer CNA went further, turning some micro digital influencers into sellers of CNA products. The program is called My CNA, and it has a platform in which the micro influencer can register, choose products in the CNA online stores, open a virtual customized store, and advertise the products of CNA in their social media accounts, the social media accounts of the digital influencer. So digital influencers can receive a commission that varies from 8 to 10% of the product price. And CNA has also developed an ambitious strategy of fast fashion in online channels. It's called Alert Trends. The project aimed to use content made by big influencers to stimulate impulse buying. The company allocated a team of 120 workers to search for trends and develop small collections of clothes in less than 24 hours to be announced on CNA website with pictures and models of all specifications in this period of time. The delivery to customers will be in a 15-day period. So Vanessa, I think that these are the main opportunities in online retail in Brazil. Thank you.
Thanks, Adriano. So it's very interesting to see how the pandemic has transformed retail in a very innovative industry, open to new concepts, ideas, technologies in an unprecedented way. But pandemic has also brought very strong effects in other channels of retail, particularly in physical stores. So this is the topic of our next panel. We'll talk about the strategies adopted by the traditional retailers to deal with the pandemic and adapt to the new reality. So we know that traditional retail was hit hard by the pandemic. Many physical stores closed for some months of 2020 as governments implemented social distance measures, and the reopenings happened in a scenario of lower income and high competition from online stores. In some cases, physical stores remained very profitable. As an example are the supermarkets, which were allowed to work during quarantines, recorded higher sales during the pandemic. Some supermarkets remaining growing at impressive rates, investing in discount stores and other formats to focus on some segments of customers. Some other retailers have invested in physical stores to complement their online operation based on concepts of omni-channel, which integrates different methods of shopping available to customers. So now I will ask our panelists to comment about what are the new functions of physical stores in this new reality. And how does this fit with strategies of traditional retailers to gain market share? So Juan, I'd like to ask you first. So what strategies some traditional retailers in Latin America have adopted and what opportunities have they explored? You know, in particular, what was the strategy about some discount stores in Colombia? Can you please comment?
Yes, thank you, Vanessa. Yes, the discount story in Colombia is actually very, very interesting because discount stores was one of the segments that was already having a lot of success in Colombia before the pandemic. So everyone was trying to see how will this segment will perform when the pandemic arrived, how it will compare with other type of supermarkets. And it is very interesting because actually for discount stores, the pandemic has been a further opportunity for growth because they have a business model basically concentrated in two aspects, cheap prices, but the way to achieve these cheap prices is basically to an enlargement of a portfolio or of own brands. They make, of course, partnership with small food growers and producers of foodstuff, mostly local or regional, and they have been able to push these products with a lot of success. And they also combine at the same time with imported products also with attractive price. And this particular feature has been very successful because at the start of the pandemic in Colombia, you saw like an uptick of sales in traditional supermarkets because there was a very severe quarantine and people have too much mobility restrictions, so they just went to the largest supermarket available. But when the things started to ease a bit and people regained mobility, but the economy was actually doing worse because of the cumulative impact of COVID on the economy. People then went back to the hard discount store and they have been performing very strong. They also have been enlarging their portfolio of home products with more elaborate stuff such as fresh meat, dairies and things like that, and they have been also getting a lot of success with that particular strategy. But not for all discount stores in Colombia this has been a good period. We have also, for example, Tienda Sara and Tiendas D1. Those were two very traditional discount stores in Colombia that have a very good year in 2020. But we have the case of Justo y Bueno, which is like a newcomer that has invested a lot in previous years, especially in 2018 and 2019. And the pandemic found the company likely overstretched, especially financially, because they have grown mostly by enlarging their debt with suppliers and suppliers actually financing their growth. So for that particular change, the period of lockdown in Colombia, which was quite large, was a bit of a blowback, and so despite the good sales and despite the context of gaining market share with other against other segments, they also have their own problems. So it's not a rosy picture, a full rosy picture. You have some of these issues even in segments that perform well. And then we have another group of retailers also, especially in Colombia. We have a group of retailers, physical store, mostly physical store retailers like Vélez, which is an apparel store chain, and for example, Boticario, which is a Brazilian cosmetic chain that has entered Colombia a few years ago. What they have been doing is, in 2020, they were forced, like many other retailers, to resort to online retail to support their operations. But the interesting thing is that they gained some market, for example, in interior regions of the country with online sales that they weren't able to penetrate before, for example, in Northern Colombia, in the case of Vélez. And now they are starting to develop a physical store infrastructure in those regions in order to capitalize the market that they have gained through online sales. This is very interesting because it's the other way around. Instead of using online stores to complement the physical stores, we're seeing here that they're using physical stores to support an expansion that was driven actually by online sales, which is very, very interesting concept. Why that? Because they want to have better services for clients. When you're a apparel retailer and you want the client to have the opportunity to exchange the goods, to try another thing, etc., so you need a physical presence in those markets that you gain. This has happened with these two companies. Then we have another case of having services as a good complement of infrastructure of physical stores, and that is the case of Corona. Corona is a home center chain in Colombia that, in order to grow also in some regions of the country, in the interior of the country, has partnered with Pinto Fresh, which is a company that offers painting services, especially for corporate clients. So in many stores of Corona, you can find actually workers from Pinto Fresh that work alongside with Corona and allow you to have the two things in the same store. So you don't need to go to hire the painting services to another place, or you don't need to go to buy the materials to another place. There's everything in the same place. And this has been a good strategy for growing in some interior cities of the country. So again, thinking as a service, thinking the infrastructure as a service. Then we have the case of Mall Plaza in Chile. Mall Plaza is a chain of shopping centers, and what they have been working is to develop some tools and processes for helping the physical retailers in the context of the pandemic, because of course shopping centers were perhaps the hardest hit segment in all of retail in Latin America. So they thought out we need to give them solutions, and they have been working on centralized pickup points for online sales. For example, people buying online from a retailer that is based in a shopping center, they can go to a designated space, and all the purchases are picked up there for all the retailers of that particular shopping center. This is a centralized system that has been working well for them. And then we have another case interesting in Mexico, another shopping center, in this case Plaza Satélite, which is one of the most traditional shopping centers in Mexico. Plaza Satélite has reinvented itself during the pandemic because it has converted a whole, basically the whole floor of their parking lot in a huge park. Actually, one of the largest parks in the whole area where the center is based, which is in Naucalpan in Mexico State. And this is very interesting because this project was before the pandemic, but with the pandemic, this has been a match in heaven, because now you have a large space where people can be there and not occupying the inside physical space where you had a lot of restrictions, especially last year. so you can have more people in the center, but at the same time in a safe way. So this has been a lot of luck for them, but it's in a way that you can reinvent yourself in the pandemic. And then finally, we have the case of Walmart in Chile. Walmart, the US supermarket retailer, has a large operation in Chile. It's one of the largest, actually, supermarkets operation in Chile. And they have decided to focus on, okay, they have a particular demographic, for example, in large neighborhoods, which tends to be people from older demographics, and those people started to go less on the streets due to the pandemic. So they have a major problem with, for example, shortage of coins, because older demographic people use a lot of cash and a lot of coin payment methods. And this became a very large problem for Walmart. So they have been installing, for example, machines that allow these people to bring their cash and their coins and exchange them for vouchers. So they have more like liquidity in the stores, and this has been key for attracting again clients. And they also have the problem, for example, that with the economic contraction, people didn't have enough resources to, for example, buy a full package of a cleaning product. So they have been installing machines where you can use reusable plastic bags and refill only what you need to purchase. This, in particular, in poor neighborhoods of Santiago, has been also a key strategy by Walmart. So we're seeing how the different retailers are basically exploring what opportunities they can get, and they are not the same. They depend on the type of retailer, depend on the demographics, on the vision of the purchasing power of the typical target clients. So all of them have to reinvent in some way, and we have these examples.
Yes, thanks, Juan. And Adriano, I'd like to hear from you a little bit about the performance of the traditional retail in Brazil. So why have some big chains grown during the pandemic, expanding the number of physical stores?
Thank you, Vanessa. The retail sector in Brazil recorded an outstanding performance in 2020 in the first months of 2021. But it's interesting that in spite of the growth of e-commerce in 2020, traditional retail continues dominating sales in Brazil. According to the local Association of E-commerce, online sales in Brazil represent 10% of total sales revenue in the retail sector. It was 5% in 2019, but it means that 90% of retail in Brazil is retail based on physical stores. So physical stores are very relevant for the Brazilian retail yet. And but it's also curious that many physical stores closed at the worst moment of the pandemic, when governments implemented quarantines, and in some other months of 2020 after that. According to the National Confederation of Trade, the CNC, 75,000 of trade companies in Brazil closed doors in a permanent way in 2020. But 99% of these stores were small and medium companies. So stores of big chains were less affected by the pandemic. It represents a change in the competitive environment of the sector, as the sector in Brazil used to be very pulverized before the pandemic, and probably it might be something more consolidated after that. One of the reasons of this consolidation is that big chains of stores usually have strong online operations, and most of them have tried to explore a synergy between their physical access and the online platforms in a similar way that Juan mentioned to other countries of Latin America, to adapt to the new normal. So the idea is to get some kind of competitive advantages with these physical assets compared to the players 100% online. So big chains of stores in Brazil also used physical stores as micro distribution centers to support online operations, and it was made possible to deliver products faster the idea was to that the idea is that the delivery company could withdraw the product in a store closer to the customer's house and then go in a shorter distance to the customer house and reduce costs and delivery in an easier way, in a faster way and cheaper way, which represents a competitive advantage in e-commerce. And yes, we have also cases of click and collect in some physical stores, but the idea in Brazil was to try to make customers to enter in physical stores and even to buy another product. So that was a strategy also. And one store that used this kind of strategy was Magazine Luiza. And Magazine Luiza, it's interesting, Magazine Luiza hadn't any physical store in the state of Rio de Janeiro before the pandemic. The state of Rio de Janeiro is the second biggest Brazilian market in Brazil. And Magazine Luiza decided to open 50 physical stores in the state of Rio de Janeiro in 2021, mainly to support online sales and increase the speed of delivery in the region. Another chain of stores, Pernambucanas, plans to open 60 stores in the state of Rio de Janeiro. And the company adopted a mixed strategy, which is a mixture of physical and digital. So customers can go to a physical stores and even navigate in their app while they are walking to a physical store. So it's a mixed strategy. It's another new strategy Pernambucano is implementing in many stores. Another trend is taking place in shopping centers. Stores are being converted in spaces of experimentation of products to offer customers a sensory contact with products which is not possible in online stores. And the idea is to complement this physical experience with online purchasing. So many stores on the segments of electronics and perfumery are trying this new format. And it's interesting that it has caused new functions to sellers. Sellers in some physical stores are working much more like consultants, giving some information, and in online platforms, in online channels, they are sellers in fact. So that are the main changes in the physical retail in Brazil, Vanessa. Thank you.
Thanks, Adriano. So it's impressive to see how traditional companies have managed to optimize their physical assets to explore new opportunities in the new normal. Therefore, retailers may continue to invest in physical stores, although in a different way than before the pandemic. We will now go to our third panel, that is about investments and prospects for retail in the region. The rise of e-commerce and new functions of the physical stores may bring new investment opportunities to retailers in Latin America. The best performing retailers may accelerate the acquisition of companies to double in new business, promote innovations, and increase market shares. However, the economic growth in the region may slow down in 2022, impacting the retail sector. Juan, some Latin American retailers are not only investing in the domestic market, but they are also expanding to other regions, other markets in the region. So I'd like you to comment more about investments in the Latin American retail sector, particularly the dynamics of cross-country investments and investments between countries.
Thanks, Vanessa. Yes, cross-country investment has been a core strategy for some very large retailers in Latin America, especially Chilean ones, like, for example, Falabella and Cencosud from decades already. But what we're seeing now with the pandemic, there are some interesting new developments and new dynamics that were not seen before. We have, for example, the case of the arrival of Swedish furniture retailer IKEA to the region. IKEA is planning to disembark in the region in force in many countries at the same time. It has a strategy of entering Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Peru. And the interesting thing is how local retailers interact in this process. And we have a very interesting example with Falabella. Falabella is one of the largest retailers in Chile. And they have been struggling in recent years, especially during the pandemic, with the decline of department stores, problems in shopping centers due to stores closing because of lack of sales during the pandemic, tenants going out of business. So they have found in IKEA a very interesting partner to make a large splash in the segment of furniture, and they are actually pushing aside. Falabella is actually pushing aside some of their own brands, for example, Homey, to making space for IKEA in this partnership, and they have been exploring opportunities to install the brand of IKEA in very large centers in Colombia, in Peru, and in Mexico. In Chile. So this partnership is very close in this particular case. So you have a large retailer like Falabella that is opening up to a foreign brand, in this case, in a partnership that will be fruitful for both, because IKEA gains a very good access to the market, and Falabella also has the opportunity to capitalize on slacking space that has generated in shopping centers due to the pandemic. But the interesting thing is that, for example, in Mexico, IKEA is also planning to enter the Mexican market, but with a completely different approach. So we can see some difference in countries. In Mexico, where the retail market, especially in shopping centers, is more like polarized. There is less concentration. There are less large retailers. The strategy is completely different. IKEA has decided to enter with a partner of them from Europe, which is Adriano Group. Adriano Group is actually a manufacturer of furniture for IKEA in the global market, but they had started to enter Adriano in some places in Asia. For example, they have starting to enter the retail business as a partner, franchise partner of IKEA. And now they're trying to explore that model in Mexico. So IKEA in Mexico will disembark in a completely different fashion. Instead of targeting very large shopping centers, they will try to make standalone stores in interior cities of the country, mid-sized stores, all in partnership with this brand Adriano. And Adriano will also invest in a large manufacturing center in Mexico, so the retail strategy will be supported with a manufacturing plant. So this is a very, very large investment and very aggressive, and this has been going on also during the pandemic, and the pandemic has not delayed these plans, which is very interesting. They are committed, fully committed of going ahead with this. So you see that the investment opportunities are there, and they are still happening. Then we have, for example, a very interesting case in Chile. Actually pertains both Chile and Mexico, because in the Chilean market, traditional brands have been losing ground due to the pandemic. Chile was one of the most concentrated markets with a few dominant brands in department stores and also, for example, in convenience stores. But the pandemic and the economic crisis that Chile already has been suffering before the pandemic, because there was a very large social turmoil in 2019 related to some political developments. So Chile has been plunging before the pandemic even. So this has created some opportunity for foreign players to, okay, this is an opportunity to capitalize in a very difficult market to enter, usually dominated by domestic brands. And we have the example of FEMSA, which is a retailer in Mexico, which operates one of the main brands in Mexico is a convenience store chain named Ocho, and they have this brand in Chile, but they are trying to grow their market share in Chile, and so they saw an opportunity in acquiring one of the competitors. One of the main competitors in Chile is OK Market. It's a convenience stores from the domestic group SMU. SMU has been struggling a lot with the pandemic. It's a large supermarket-oriented business, but they have been struggling and need to reorganize this business. So they reached an agreement to sell basically OK Market to FEMSA. So FEMSA now is in a position to basically control the convenience stores market of Chile, which is something that would sound like ridiculous like 10 years ago, because of that domestic brands were very, very strong and didn't let many opportunities for foreign retailers. So now we have opportunities of a large foreign retailer gaining a huge ground in a difficult market for foreign retailers like Chile, for competition issues, not for barriers of entrance, because actually Chile is very open, but due to the strong positioning of the domestic players. So the very interesting development and a show of what's coming.
Thank you, Juan. And Adriano, what about Brazil? So what are the expectations for investments in retail in Brazil? We know that Brazil is in a challenging scenario of accelerating inflation, and the expectation for economic growth in 2022 has been reduced. So what are the prospects for retail in this scenario?
Great. I will start with the prospects. The retail industry may grow by 5% in 2021, in line with the expected GDP growth of 5.3% for this year. But it's in fact a rebound from the 4.1% fall of GDP recorded in 2020. It's a low base effect. However, the retail, in spite of growing by 5% this year, the performance of retail in Brazil may be unequal between segments, because some segments expanded very fast in 2020 and in the first half of 2021, like construction materials, furniture, and home appliances. It happened because many people stayed at home and wanted to buy things related to home, and even sometimes to expand, to make some rentals in their homes, and etc. On the other hand, sales of apparel and vehicles plunged as the demand for services, because people avoided face-to-face activities and social events, and also in the case of the automotive sector, many car factories paralyzed due to a shortage of components, which is a global effect. For 2021 and 2022, probably the demand for these three activities, like apparel and vehicles, may increase substantially, recovering from the pandemic, and also services. The demand for services, hotels, restaurants, and hairdressing will surge, as Brazilians may reduce the share of their income they spend with goods. So probably the demand for construction materials and durable goods like home appliances and furniture may moderate compared to 2020. But sales of apparel and vehicles may recover as consumers postponed the acquisition of these goods, which are durable or semi-durable during the pandemic. So Brazilians will acquire more apparel and vehicles, and probably this segment will record a very increases in investments in 2021. I will start talk about investments now. Some big retailers of durable goods and apparel have raised money on financial markets recently. Probably they will use this money to invest in technology, logistics, and expansion to explore the regions, and also in e-commerce. So probably they will acquire a lot of startups on these segments, and probably they will do some M&A operations with some traditional players. It's happening now. Recently, the French supermarket group Carrefour has acquired its local peer, Grupo Big, and it was an opportunity to explore some synergies, because Grupo Big has not one significant operation in online channels, and Carrefour wants to expand to some regions dominated by Group Big. And it's interesting about retail in Brazil that we may see something like retail sales in volume decreasing in many segments in 2021 and 2022, and increasing in value terms because inflation in the country is accelerating, and it's a restraining force for the recovery of retail in Brazil. And also another restraining force are the fall in households' purchasing power due to a fall in income, the labor market, which is struggling to recover as the unemployment rate is around 14%, and interest rates, which are growing recently by the central bank. So that are the trends in the future for Brazil, the prospects, Vanessa.
Yeah, thank you, Adriano. So before this is our last panel before our Q&A session, and I would like to ask the panelists to tell us some final considerations about the sector and its future. So Juan, what are your perspectives for the retail in Latam that you would like to share? Some final considerations?
Yes, thanks, Vanessa, again. I think that for the particular case of countries such as Mexico, Chile, and Colombia, there are two things that it's important to monitor going ahead in order to forecast the performance of the retail sector. On the one hand, you have the issue of the drivers for growth in 2021 and 2022, mostly the macroeconomic drivers. And if we start with Mexico, we will see that Mexico has been hit very hard, by the pandemic, because it has affected, for example, its tourism industry, which is very large for Mexico in terms of revenue. And in spite Mexico applying less restrictions than other countries in the region, still the economy was quite hit hard in 2020. But this year they have been, according to the YMF, the economy is likely to expand by 5% in terms of GDP growth, and by another 3% in 2022. And they have been recovering on the back of, for example, increased worker remittance. There has been an increased flow from the United States in this part of the pandemic, this later stage. And also the recovery of the US itself is also tractioning very hard Mexico. So you have like external forces playing a role in helping the economic recovery. And also Mexico is trying to revitalize its tourism industry. It's a major goal for the government to try to capitalize the recovery of the tourism industry globally by having a very open policy for receiving tourists, and also they are planning to invest in large infrastructure projects like Tren Maya, which is a train line of 1,000 kilometers, will be completely new and constructed in the southern tip of Mexico, especially to connect states like Quintana Roo, where Cancun and other famous beaches of Mexico in the Caribbean coast are located. And this is planned both for international tourism and for domestic tourism. So that they are finding ways to recover the motor for growth, the engine for growth that they have lost due to the pandemic. But the problem you have, and this affects retails also, is that in all these countries, you have also some clouding things or clouding concerns in the business sentiment. This is basically also derived from the pandemic or the response of the government for the pandemic. For example, in Mexico, we have there is an issue with electricity reform law that the government is pushing, and this is causing some concern for investing in the sector. So you have some clouds in that sense. So investment might be a bit lower than it was in the past, and this also affects the macroeconomic demand, of course. And then you have the case of Chile. In Chile, Chile has been one of the countries that has vaccinated faster in the world against COVID. This has helped also Chile to sort of get out of its lockdown more easily than other countries in the southern corner, like Argentina, which has struggled much more because of slower vaccination. So Chile is also posed for a very good year in 2021. YMF predicts 6.2% growth for the year, also driven by external factors. Again, we have, for example, the recovery in international price of copper. So it's a very similar story like Mexico, where external factors and also some policies of recovery are helping the country reactivate. But at the same time, Chile is suffering from political concerns and some problems in business sentiments that outweigh this. So there are also risks. Chile is in the midst of a process of constitutional reform, and this is causing some concern because no one really knows how this will pan out in a lot of key areas, for example, in pensions. There's talk about reforming pension system, and these type of things also affect the prospects. And then we have the case of Colombia. It's a very, very similar picture. This is the interesting analogy with these other countries. This group of countries all belong to the Pacific Alliance trade bloc, so they are very similar in a lot of respects. And in Colombia, the core focus of recovery is put in monetary policy, in a very lax monetary policy, trying to boost credit and boost loans, and also some relaxation of some loan criteria and credit criteria for helping the financial sector to be a push for consumption. But again, as in the other countries we have in Colombia, recently there has been a lot of conflict related to a fiscal reform that the government is pushing. That's actually very relevant to the retail sector, because the core of the fiscal reform is related to changes in the value-added tax. The government is planning to increase the value-added tax for a lot of goods that were exempted, and this has been like a storm for better consumers, and this was the main factor behind the social reaction. And so this is another thing that Colombia has to deal, because it needs to adjust its fiscal budget. It needs to consolidate its fiscal trajectory going forward, but at the same time, it doesn't want to disrupt the recovery. So it's the same story we see in all countries, basically.
Thank you, Juan. Now, Adriano, and for Brazil, would you like to share some final considerations about the retail sector in the country?
Yes, I will talk briefly about the future of the sector. We will have two realities in the retail sector of Brazil for 2022. For 2022, we expect a moderation of economic growth in Brazil, and probably it will affect more small and medium companies in the retail sector. So that's one reality. Another reality is for big players in the retail sector of Brazil. For these big players, I expect a very dynamic environment in the next years. Probably these big retailers will compete to offer the better user-friendly technologies, the faster logistics, and even the better integration to financial solutions, just to ease the purchasing experience of customers. There are new technological opportunities, for example, in the voice commerce, which was not implemented in Brazil yet, but probably many retailers, online retailers, will invest a lot of money to implement this technology in Brazil, because it has a lot of potential. And there are also some other good opportunities to big retailers. For example, the rents became cheaper in the main cities of Brazil, so probably it will be a stimulus for them to increase, to expand physical stores. So that are my final considerations, Vanessa. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriano. So we're getting to our last panel, which are the Q&A session. We have some questions from the audience. So The first one, Adriano, this is for you. Some retail stores in Brazil have made partnerships with financial institutions and fintechs. Has it changed during the pandemic?
Well, before the pandemic, many retailers really had made partnerships with financial institutions and fintechs to offer to customers some products like credit cards, loans, and insurances in physical stores. During the pandemic, due to the surge of e-commerce, retailers continue to offer financial services, but in online platforms. So the scope, the focus of the products has changed. For example, we Brazilians are using more cashback programs than in before. And even retailers continue to offer in online platforms loans, insurances, banking accounts, and so on. So probably the partnerships will continue with financial institutions and even fintechs, but in a different way than before. And even some retailers have been acquiring some fintechs recently, as they acquired some fintechs before the pandemic. So it's a movement, that is a trend that is continuing in Brazil.
Thank you, Adriano. Juan, we got a question for you, and it's what emergency measures did Latin countries sustain in 2021 in order to help economic recovery from COVID-19?
Well, this is actually a very interesting question because we know that a lot of Latin American countries in 2020 they use a lot of measures, especially income support measures, to help the economy to endure better the concept of the crisis. Like, for example, cash transfers, a very large number of loans for former workers. There has been a very valid group of strategies, but in 2021, what they have kept this group of countries, well, in most cases they have been doing more or less the same they have been doing in 2020, but in a sort of a reduced scale. And although this varies depending on country. For example, in Mexico has basically not implemented any system of cash transfers besides what already had before the pandemic. So basically, the government has stick to loans, to like soft loans for workers and pensioners. But this is mostly has been their strategy. They have not spent it too much because they have largely reopened, and they are sticking to recover the engine for growth. So as we talked before, so they have not been doing a lot on this type of front. But then you have, for example, the case of Chile, which is completely different. Chile, in fact, has implemented one of the largest cash transfers programs in Latin America, which is the emergency family income. It was implemented in 2020 due to COVID and has been extended several times, and it's quite large for the Latin American standards because it grants around $150 per person per household for the targeted household, which are mostly for informal workers, and they have sustained this, and they also last year, not in the beginning of the pandemic, but mostly from the second half of the year, they implemented a very controversial reform that allowed people to withdraw funds from their private pension funds in a limited manner. They have allowed first a withdrawal of up to 10% of savings, and they have expanded this several times. And now there are some people that have withdrawn like 30% of their savings in their pension funds, and this has been a huge boost, of course, for retail sales in the short term, in particular for the consumer electronics and household appliance and durable goods. When this particular measure was implemented, the sales of those segments skyrocketed. So this has been popular, but at the same time, it's a very large risk macroprudential risk, it's a fiscal risk. So we have the case that Chile has been doing a lot in the short term to try to consolidate the recovery in the short term, especially because of the political environment with the constitutional reform, but this may bring problems on the long term. And Colombia has been following a strategy more like the one of Mexico, with less intervention. It has developed last year a program called Ingreso Solidario, which is a cash transfer system for informal workers, but it's quite small. They have been sustaining it up until June of this year. And now they have facing the problem of if they want to retire this program, there is a lot of backlash. So they are sort of trapped in this scenario. But in the same case of Mexico, they are trying to the economy to boost itself and not sustain too much emergency measures in 2021.
Thanks, Juan. So we have a time for a last question. Adriano, shopping at physical stores in Latin could be considered an entertainment activity. Do you believe this would delay transformation of the consumer habits in the region compared to those observed in developed countries?
Yes, in Brazil, it's also an entertainment activity also, but I don't suppose it will delay, it will be negative for the digital transformation. I suppose the opposite. I suppose that you stimulate the digital transformation because, as I explained, there is some opportunities, especially in shopping centers, to have some stores and kiosks as centers of experimentation, and even sellers to help customers to make online purchases. So I think that you will not be negative. You also stimulate some online purchase, because I need to remember that online purchasing is something recent to Brazil. In some developed countries, customers are used to buy online decades ago. And in Brazil, it's very recent. It was stimulated by the pandemic. So I suppose it will be positive for online purchase to have the shopping centers of experimentation, and even this habit of have shopping as an entertainment activity in physical stores. So I think it's possible. It's positive, sorry.
Okay, so thank you, great. So we don't have more, unfortunately, we don't have more time for all the questions. So we'll have to go to our final part. And can you go to next slide, Adriana? Yeah. Okay, so I'd like just to share with you some IMIS insights, which are industry reports produced by our specialists. And we also have some other reports from CAC, from ISI emerging markets, and the IMIS insights, which I already told you, and then the CAC insights reports that are macroeconomic reports. Our Foresight 2021 is available on the website for download, and some ISI thematic reports that are also produced by our local experts. And I'd like just to remember you and to answer the survey, because it's very important for us, and also to follow us in our social media channels for more content, and to know about our webinars. And if you have any other questions, or if you have any comments you'd like to do about the webinars, you can write an email to webinars@isimarkets.com. So hope you have enjoyed this time with us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Adriano, and see you in the next webinar.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you to everyone for watching and supporting our webinar. So goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.